Hare Krishna. Good morning from Sridham Mayapur, the devotees. It's time for daily adventure in Srimad Bhagavata. Vivanshavam Gangumandayate Yadkripatamaham Vande Srila Paramananda He Madhava Adunda Ruci-makaranda Se makaranda Panakori Anande Bolo Hari Hari Harinkana Bandha Vela Harikori Vekshakadona Senchakadolanka Paraye Manamo Rahu Nirantare Manamo Nirantare Rahu Hare Krishna Boli Jiva Jao Hare Krishna Boli Jao Jiva Moteru Dada 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 Moteru Dada 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 Moteru Dada 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 Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Good morning, dear devotees from Śraddhā Mayapur. So we have a special discussion today. We're going to continue our talks about the nature of Suddha Bhakti, pure devotion. But today we're also going to say a few words, if we have time, about Srila Rupa Goswami. You may see these pictures behind me here. Underneath is Srila Prabhupada, and on the other side is, his hands up, is our Guru Maharaj, Sri Srimad Bhagavata Maharaj. And just above them is a beautiful picture done by a devotee in the 1940s. His name is Kartik Viswas. And you see in the center is Sanatana Goswami, and to his left is Rupa Goswami. These are the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan. So, Goragraganya Gana Gotra Goloruharam Goranga Guda Tama Gopyada Kopa Vriksham Gopala Gada Ratidam Yati Singha Gora Govinda Deshikavaram Satatam Panchakopati Vishcham Kripa Sindhu Vyayevacham Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnava Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Rama Rama. So we're reading from Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam, the king of all literatures. This is Canto 3. We're on chapter 29, the description of pure devotional service. And this is our 4th session on texts 11 to 12. This is spoken by Lord Kapila Deva to his mother, Devahuti. Madguna Shruti Matrena Moyi Sarva Guhasaye Manogatira Vichina Yata Gangam Vasom Buddho Lakshanam Bhakti Yogasya Nirgunasya Yudavitam Ahoitu Avyavahita Yabhati Purushottame. Translation: the manifestation of unadulterated devotional service is exhibited when one's mind is at once attracted to hearing the transcendental name and qualities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is residing in everyone's heart. Just as the water of the Ganges flows naturally down towards the ocean, such devotional ecstasy, uninterrupted by any material condition, flows toward the Supreme Lord. We finished the entire purport of Srila Prabhupada in our first session. I'm just going to read a few sentences from it this morning. He says, the basic principle of this unadulterated, pure devotional service is love of Godhead. Madguna Shruti Matrena means, quote, just after hearing about the transcendental qualities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, end of quote. These qualities are called Nirguna. So we've been speaking something previously about Saguna Bhakti, or Bhakti which is in the modes of material nature. And now we're hearing something about the nature of Nirguna Bhakti, which is free from the modes of material nature. The qualities he has is it's avicina. It attracts the course of the heart continuously to Krishna, to who is the heart of everyone's heart, Sarvagu Hasaye. And the nature of this bhakti is it's ahoitaki, it's causeless, and it's avyavahita, not separated. And again, as we've been discussing, this is an important word in the verse because the previous verses, beginning with text number 8, use a number of different phrases to describe a separate vision. Text 8 spoke about binadrik, or someone who's a separatist, and the text 9 and 10 spoke about pritag bhav, or someone, again, who is a separatist. So just to review a little bit, going back, this bhakti is unobstructed, avyavahita, because it's devoid of any blockage of jnana or karma, sattva-guna or rajaguna. And we spoke something, we've been stuck on this topic for a few days, Mahaprabhu's instructions to Sanatana Goswami. And he speaks about the nature of pure bhakti. He says there, Prabhu Kohe, Vaishnava Dehe Chid Anandamoy, Prakrita Kabunoy. Now he says that this body of the devotee, it's Chid Anandamoy, it's transcendental, Prakrita Kabunoy, it's not material whatsoever. When does that begin? Diksha Kali Bhakta Kori Atma Samarpana. At the time of initiation, when someone is Atma Samarpana, when they're completely surrendered. Sei Kali Krishna Tadi Kori Atma Sam. Krishna accepts such a devotee at that time as being non-different from himself, and their body is considered to be transcendental. So then we discussed how, from a perspective given by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in Mādhurya Kadambini, how if Saranagati is done properly, then there's no more anarthas. And if it's not done in the proper sense, then if someone hasn't completely surrendered to Guru, then one has to go through the stages of anartha nivriti and so many other things. And we spoke about the nature of bhakti and how bhakti is based on śraddhā or faith, and is based on lokik. There's two types of faith, lokik śraddhā, common faith, and paramarthik śraddhā, or transcendental faith. And this faith is the cause of bhakti. And we heard something yesterday about different types of that faith. I want to speak something more about this today. There's ruci-pradhāna and vicāra-pradhāna. And there's a difference between the faith and these two personalities. We have this. Day before yesterday, we spoke something about vicāra-pradhāna, and how the vicāra-pradhāna-bhakta attains śraddhā. And this is our topic we're still going on today. And JIva Goswami was speaking about through the association of sadhus. Pratamam tava tat tat sangajatena. He says in his Bhakti Sandarbha, Anucheta 202, that it begins through association with devotees. And with those devotees, someone gets a particular kind of faith. And then tat parampara kata ruci-pradhāna. Then some taste, some ruci awakens after that faith in parampara kata, in kata that's coming down to disciplic succession. And he says further, jata bhagavat samukasya tat tan anusanginaiva tat tad bhajaniye bhagavat avirbhave visheshe tad bhajana marga visheshe tad ruchir jayate. So then when someone turns their face, bhagavat samukasya, toward the Lord, they develop a particular taste for a specific form of the worship of Lord and the particular path of bhajan. Bhajaniya bhagavat avirbhavi vishesh. Bhajana marga vishesh, a particular marg of bhajan. And when he says they know more about these things, then he says, Shri Gurut Venashri Tat Shravanam Kriyate. Then they accept one or more of those sadhus that they were hearing from as their Shravan Guru in order to undertake a study of the scriptures. And that's where we left off on our Monday session. But I would like to say a few words right now about Srila Rupa Goswami. He's glorified by Raghunath Das Goswami in his Dana Keli Chintamani, text 175. He says, Adadanas Chinam Dantaya Idam Yache Puna Puna Srimad Rupa Padambojo Rajoham Swam Bhave Bhave. He says, Adadana Trinam Dantaya, with trina, with straw in my teeth. I'm begging Puna Puna again and again that Srimad Rupa Padambojo, Pada Amboja, the dust of Rupa Goswami, that Raja, that dust, may I have that dust of Rupa Goswami's lotus feet. Birth, bhave bhave, birth after birth. Premadas, in his one of his songs, he describes it. Sri Rupa Manjari Sakir Ashraya Laiva Bhama Pasi Rahi Ange Chamara Dulaba. When will I take shelter of Srila Rupa Goswami, Rupa Manjari, who's the Siddha form of Rupa Goswami in the spiritual world? When standing at her side, Bhama Pasi on the left side, which is the side where Lalita's at, and Rupa Manjari serving Lalita, and also on Krishna's left side is Srimati Radharani. When standing at her side, will I fan the divine couple, the Chamara whisk? So Srila Prabhupada is described in Nectar of Instruction. The Krishna consciousness movement is conducted under the supervision of Srila Rupa Goswami. Therefore, we're Rupa Nugas. It's conducted under the supervision of Srila Rupa Goswami. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, and some of his last instructions to his disciples, I'd like to read you a few things that he said. He said, I advise all of you to preach the teachings of Rupa Raghunath, Rupa Goswami and Raghunath Das Goswami, with all your energy and resources. Our ultimate goal shall be to become the dust of the lotus feet of Sri Rupa and Raghunath Goswamis. He said, we are not desirous of becoming a hero of work or a reformer of religion, but our reality may be identified with the dust of the lotus feet of Sri Rupa and Raghunath, for that is our everything. So this is an important day for Gaudiya Vaishnavas. We meditate on this day on Rupa Goswami, and I'm hoping I'll have a few more minutes to say something about him. But I want to go on with what I promised to the devotees and speak something more about these two types of faith, the vicāra-pradhāna-bhakta and the ruci-pradhāna-bhakta that they each have, and how that faith is cultivated. It's a very important topic. So we heard that in the beginning, the vicāra-pradhāna-bhakta, he gets some good fortune of sadhu sangha. From that sadhu sangha, he develops particular faith in parampara katha, in katha and the parampara, and he has some ruci for that. And then from that, his face turns toward the Lord. And he develops some particular ruci in a particular form of the Lord. We spoke more about that on Monday. And in a particular path of bhajan. And then from that, as they go deeper in that path of bhajan, then they want to have a shravan guru, someone who's going to teach them the philosophy and siddhanta about that, and not just in an academic kind of way, but in a practical kind of way. And so they conduct, JIva Goswami speaking about this, and he speaks about this in Bhakti Sandarbha, and he quotes a verse there, which is given by Madhvacharya. We're not sure where it's from originally, but Madhvacharya in his commentary on Vedanta Sutra, he quotes this verse. Jiva Goswami quotes it, and he also quotes it in his Paramatma Sandarbha. It's an important verse, and it speaks about 6 different criterias or ways that such a person, this vicāra-pradhāna-bhakta, that he studies the śāstra in order to develop this faith. The verse describes, upakramo pasanghara abhyasa purvata phalam artha vado papati cha lingam tat parjaninaye. So these 6 different criteria are, first is upakrama, upasanghara. Upakrama means the opening or the beginning statement. What does the author begin with? And we should analyze Srimad Bhagavatam in this way. Adavante cha madhye cha hari sarvatra gite. We understand what is the beginning, adav. What is the ante? Here, Jiva Goswami is quoting this verse which says, upasanghara. That means the concluding statements. So what is the first statement of the Bhagavatam? Dharma projitikaitava. In the very beginning it says it cuts out all types of cheating religion. And then at the very end of the Bhagavatam, it's described as the Paramahamsa Samhita. This is the literature meant for the Paramahamsas in the very last chapter, 13 of the 12th canto of the Bhagavatam. So this is how we study. We by studying in this way, in an analytical way, that vicāra-pradhāna-bhakta cultivates his faith. So first is upakrama, upasanghara. He studies the beginning and the closing statements. And then the abhyasa, what is repeated again and again. If something is repeated, Jiva Goswami in one place, he comments on in the verse, Harinama, Harinama, Harinama eva kevalam, that if something is repeated, especially 3 times, it means, hey, listen to this, really you should listen to this, you should really, really listen to this. This is something really important. So if something's repeated again and again, as we find in Srimad Bhagavatam, from the beginning, Adavante, Chamadye cha, Hari Sarvatra Giyate, Krishna is described throughout the Bhagavatam and Vedic literatures, the beginning, the middle, and the end. So this is called abhyasa. When someone has repetition of this subject, we mentioned the same word abhyasa in a talk we gave last night, and also I think in our last session. There's Krishna says in Gita, abhyasa yoga yuktena. Abhyasa means to practice or to do something again and again and again. So abhyasa means we should study what is it that's been given again and again and again in the Vedic literatures. Then the third way they're studying is called apurvata. Apurvata is what are the extraordinary or uncommon statements that are made. Now, there are many different Puranas, and all the Puranas glorify Krishna directly or indirectly, but Srimad Bhagavatam is the topmost literature. Because in the very beginning, Dharma projitikaitava kicks out all types of cheating religion and establishes Yato Bhakti Hopsaje, pure devotion to the Lord, which is ahoitaki apratiyata, has no motivation and it's never stopped. In the very beginning of the Bhagavatam, this is established. And then, what is the full of? What is the fruit? We're hearing this. Right? So it's described repeatedly in the Bhagavatam that if someone hears the Bhagavatam, they'll very quickly get Krishna prema. And shoka moha bhayapaha. Immediately all their fear, lamentation, and illusion, that goes away. And someone, bhakti udpadyate pumsa, the first canto of the Bhagavatam describes that this bhakti immediately develops. And in his commentary on the verse, Srila Bhaktivinode Thakkur says it means Krishna prema very quickly by hearing from Srimad Bhagavatam. So this is the phulla, the fruit. This is a fourth subject matter that the vicāra-pradhāna-bhakta, the devotee who has these considerations, the intellectual kind of devotee, by which they develop faith. Now we should also mention that there's 6 different ways to analyze the śāstra, and it's not that the vicāra-pradhāna-bhakta is doing every one of them. He may do one, or he may do 2, or he may do more, he may do all of them. But he may only do at least one. So the 5th criteria, the 5th way they analyze is called artavad. What is the explanation, the glorification of the subject? And the 6th is called upapatti, the conclusion, the logical arguments to establish the conclusion. So we should, such a devotee, a vicāra-pradhāna-bhakta, should study in this way, and we should also consider these 6 considerations. What is the opening and concluding statements of our acharyas? What did Srila Prabhupada preach about when he first came to the West? I can tell you, very interesting, if you listen to his early lectures in the 1960s in 26 Second Avenue, he was speaking about Braj Līlā in Krishna Prema. And then after some time, perhaps he started looking more at the students, and some of them were leaving. Then he started stressing, well, you're not your body. And don't have sex life so much. And things like that. And then he started speaking some about Varnashram Dharma. And then what was his concluding topics? We should study what is the upakrama, upasamhara, the opening and closing statements. We should consider what is the purpose of the author. Who is it meant for? If we read the works of our Goswamis, we should understand who are they writing for. Because when you speak to a particular audience, you're going to speak in a certain way. That's the art of communication. That's the art of all art. If you're making a painting, if you're making a song, whatever it is you're doing, it's communication. You want to convey the feelings of your heart through the medium of that particular art. But you're going to do it in a certain way. If you're making a children's book, you're painting for that, you may do it in a certain way. If you're painting something for adults, you may paint in another kind of way. Similarly, discussion. If you're speaking to children, you may, I'm very good at speaking with babies. I have this quality. I go, boo, boo, okay. And they just start laughing like anything. So I know how to talk to them. I can shuck and jive with little babies like that. But now if I go and I meet some university professor from Oxford University and I say, boo, boo, like that, probably not very cool. It's not the way to speak to them. So the first thing in any art, any communication is, who am I trying to speak to? Because art has these 3 qualities. It has the art itself, it has the artist, but it also has to have the person who appreciates the art. And the artist is trying to convey his message, his feelings, through the meaning and medium of that painting. This is communication, and we should study it in this way. So JIva Goswami in Bhakti Sandarbha, speaking about all this really technical stuff that we're hearing about today, he says that after they've been hearing these 6 things, then comes manana. They start reflecting. Oh yeah, it was like this and meant this. They think about what they've read. It's a very, very important position. We were reading something last night. Let's see if I can find it here really quick. It's such a beautiful thing. Here it goes. We're reading something we had a nice discussion with Chaitanya Charan Prabhu about individuality and institutions, and we read some things from an amazing article by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta where he spoke about, he says that Mahaprabhu's teachings mandates the all absence of conventionalism. There should be no conventionalism. for the teachings of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And then we read something which is almost to me like a commentary on this from a person who's not a Krishna conscious devotee, at least externally. His name was Thomas Merton, a famous Catholic theologian and monk. And I just have to read, I liked it so much last time, I'm so fired up about it, I have to read this again. He says, in actual fact, conventions are the death of real tradition, as they are of all real life. Conventions are the death of real tradition. Now he's writing this from a Catholic perspective, and he's a man of God. He's trying to approach the Lord, and he's sick and tired of all the conventions, and he sees what that does to spiritual life. He says these conventions are parasites which attach themselves to the living organism of tradition. Now mark it here. Very philosophical what he's saying. He's saying that tradition means the living organism. And we can compare this tradition, evam parampara praptam imam rajasya. This is the living tradition. This is our parampara. It has to be something living. So he says these conventions are parasites which attach themselves to the living organism of tradition and devour all its reality, turning it into a hollow formality. It goes on. Tradition is living and active, but convention is passive and dead. Tradition does not form us automatically. We have to work to understand it. But convention is accepted passively as a matter of routine. Therefore, convention easily becomes an evasion of reality. Just had to read that. And there's more to it, but it's such an amazing statement. So, such devotees, when speaking about this vicāra-pradhāna-bhakta, okay, these devotees who have this, who develop this kind of faith, vicāra-pradhāna-śraddhā, JIva Goswami says, which is faith based on some consideration. They're intellectuals, and they will consider one to six different aspects of the śāstra. And after hearing that, then they come to the point of manana. And they start contemplating what they've heard. And they do that, JIva Goswami says, in order to get rid of two kinds of doubt. Okay, this is really technical today. Two kinds of doubts. Saṅsaya in Sanskrit means doubt. So the first, these are called the sambhavana and viparita bhavana. A sambhavana means that thinking what I've heard, it's impossible. It can't be. I heard a recording once of Srila Prabhupada speaking to a couple of disciples who unfortunately left him. And you'll understand perhaps why when I begin to speak about it was in Los Angeles, and they came to Srila Prabhupada. In the beginning of the discussion, actually, it sounds like, well, these are pretty good guys, because they're saying we should be more personal with the devotees, and the managers are not being good, and this and this. But then they start revealing this sambhavana. Some say they have this doubt. He said, Prabhupada, how is it possible that, I forget what he said, Prabhupada read something like that Ugrasena had how many bodyguards? How many? No, it's trillion or quadrillion. It's something quadrillion. And they said, there's not that many people in the whole world. And how do they have enough toilets for that many people? And that makes a lot of sense. I'm sorry, it's just a logical thing. But this is a sambhavana. The Saṅsaya, they're thinking that what they heard, it can't be possible. It can't be literal. And so they were asking Srila Prabhupada in this way. But as Shamapriya Mataji was pointing out the other day nicely in class, our acharyas have described in the pastime with Brahma Vimohana līlā, Lord Brahma becomes bewildered, that everything is within Vrindavan. All the universe is within one speck of dust of Vrindavan. And so as Vrindavan likes, it can expand itself or it can contract itself. It can appear to be very small and to be 84 crores of land in UP, or it can be unlimited and have all the universes within it. But to understand that and appreciate that, we require some faith. And so if we have this sambhavana Sangsaya, this doubt, oh, this is not possible. And the next type of doubt is even worse. It's viparita bhavana sangsaya, where they think that it's just not true. I just refuse. It's just not true. I just don't accept this. This is some mythology or whatever like that. And there are many, many people who study Srimad Bhagavatam in the universities and other places, and they say it's a kind of mythology. It's not true. They have this viparita bhavana, sangsaya, this doubt, thinking that it's false. So then in his Kramasandarbha commentary, we're being very technical today, don't mind. This is his purport to, JIva Goswami's purport to Bhagavatam, first canto, chapter 2, text 21. He explains this asambhavana, sangsaya, this doubt. He says, asambhava, it says, tatta shravanena tavajgyeya gata sambhavanas chidyante iti. Chidyanti means to cut. He says this type of doubt, it's cut through the process tatta shravanena, through hearing from the proper person. This type of this is sambhavana, sangsaya, this doubt will go away. And this is how the vicāra-pradhāna-bhakta, going slowly, how they cut their doubts. And then he goes on to speak about the viparita bhavana, this doubts which means they just think it's false. He says, mananena tadgata viparita bhavana, that this viparita bhavana is cut when one reflects the manana, when we can contemplate something deeply about it, then it cuts this idea that it's just not true. Srila Prabhupada sometimes would comment that he spoke this to the members of the BI, the Bhaktivinode Institute, that the way the scientists begin, they begin with a conclusion. And when you go to the university, you just study plants, it's not so bad. If you study biology, it's really tough. Boy, they start with a conclusion that there's no God. That's the beginning. And they set about trying to prove that there's no God. Srila Prabhupada said we should do just the opposite. We begin with the conclusion that God exists, that Krishna exists, and we speak in a way, we research in a way to support that. And that happens through manana. But if someone just has this viparita bhavana, sangsaya, this doubt that it's just a lie, and they can't overcome that, they don't practice manana. They don't begin to think. And that person is defeated in bhakti. He can't develop faith. JIva Goswami goes on in his commentary in the Bhagavatam. Sakshat karinatvatma yogyata gata sambhavana viparita bhavane iti gyayam. And he mentions a third type of doubt, which he calls atma yogriya gata sambhavana, or doubts related to oneself. In other words, they're thinking about that it's just not possible for me to get perfection. And they have this false conception about themselves. And he says these types of doubts are vanquished by direct experience of the absolute truth. So, as a result of following this process that we're speaking about, the vicāra-pradhāna-bhakta, he develops faith, he gets śraddhā, that Krishna is everywhere, he's controlling everything, and these give him determination to serve the Lord. And that's the proper result of śāstra śraddhā, or scriptural faith. And then there's the ruci-pradhāna-bhaktas. We'll just mention them very quickly. JIva Goswami in Bhakti Sandarbha explains this. Fasten your safety belt. It'll be over in just a moment. I'll tell a really entertaining story to make up for all this philosophy, okay? JIva Goswami says, ruci-pradhānam tu tadrig vicāra-peksha jayate, kintu means but, sadhu sangha līlā katha shravana ruci śraddhā shravanadya vritti rupa eva so marga. He says the ruci-pradhāna-bhaktas, they don't depend on this process of all this philosophy and everything like that. They're like a Bengali mother. She doesn't even know how to read, maybe. But when she hears someone speaking on the Bhagavatam, she begins to cry. She has some ruci. She's a very, very simple person. JIva Goswami, he says that such persons, vicāra-peksha jayate, they don't depend upon this this vicāra-pradhāna. They just hear the Lord's pastime, sadhu sangha līlā katha shravana, and ruci-śraddhā. They get some taste for that. And then they attain śraddhā. He says first they get some taste, and then they get śraddhā. This taste is a very, very important thing. And I'd like to speak more about this in our next session from Srila Prabhupada also. He says, then they, after hearing repeatedly about the Lord with this taste, they begin to serve him with faith. So this is the nature of the bhakta. Madguna shruti mādhurya sarva guhasaye. The devotee is being spoken about in this verse today, that they become so attracted to hearing about Krishna. We'd like to read you something today about Srila Rupa Goswami. From two different books. You may not be very familiar with the stories we're going to tell you. One is from a book called Bhagavata by Narahari Chakravarti. Many devotees know something of that. And the second is the Bhaktamala of what's his name? Nabadas, thank you, Krishna Kun, which is appreciated by Bhaktivinode Thakkur and Bhaktisiddhanta. So, Bhaktivinode Thakkur. There's many different Bhaktamalas when we talk about literature. And some of them are a little impersonal, some of them stress Gyan. But the Bhaktamala of Nabadas, Bhaktivinode Thakkur liked it very much, and Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. In one of the Sajjana Toshinis I found, where Srila Bhaktisiddhanta recommended that devotees were studying for Bhakti Shastri, they should also read Bhaktamala. Nice book. In the Bhakti Ratnakara, fifth wave, it says, Ekadina Radha Krishna Vichedaka Tate Kandaye Vaishnava Murcha Gata Pritivite. Ekadin, one day, Radha Krishna Vicheda Katate, the Vaishnavas were hearing some topics about the separation of Radha and Krishna. Kandaye Vaishnava, when they heard that, they began to cry, Amurcha Gata Prativite. They fainted and they fell down on the ground. But Rupa Goswami just sat there. Everybody else started crying and rolling on the ground and fainting. And some people were saying, oh, Rupa Goswami, he's not a rasik bhakta. All these other devotees, they're getting some great ecstasy from hearing this, but Rupa Goswami is just sitting there. Everybody else is crying and rolling on the ground and they're fainting. But Narahari Chakravarti goes on to explain, Agnisika praya jvale Rupera hridoya tatapi bahire kichu prakashana hoya. They couldn't understand what was going on in the heart of Rupa Goswami. That his heart, it said here, Agni Shika Prayajvali, there was a fire going on inside of his heart. And someone had some doubt about this. Oh, Rupa Goswami's not really experiencing anything. Someone said, give me a piece of cotton, some cloth. And they went over and they put that cloth in front of the nose of Rupa Goswami. And immediately it caught on fire. Because Rupa Goswami had such intense feelings, but those feelings were being hidden. So this is the nature of bhakti, which is free from the modes of material nature. It's avichina. It's always running toward Krishna. Yata, just like Gangam Baso Mudo, just like the Ganga goes toward the ocean. Rupa Goswami's mind and heart is like that. There's several nice stories about Rupa Goswami. I won't tell all of them I was thinking about, but one more I'd like to tell you. A very interesting story, how they left home. Rupa and Sanatana Goswamis were the chief minister and the prime minister of the Nawab Hussain Shah. Rupa Goswami's original name was Santosh. And it's described that one night they were working very hard the whole night on accounts. Krishna Kun hates doing accounts, and she has to stay up sometimes doing accounts. She's not the only one Rupa and Sanatana Goswami are also doing accounts. And it's because they got so sick of those accounts that they left home. So we can relate to that, I hope. Krishna Kun hates doing accounts. Okay. So once these two brothers, they stayed up all night. They were there in Ramakeli, in northern Orissa, northern West Bengal. We visited that place some years ago. I wrote some article about it in a magazine. They were working on these accounts because there were a lot of mistakes in it, and the accounts weren't in order, said like this in Bhakti-mala. There was mistakes and problems in it, not the first one with them. And they became so absorbed in their work, they forgot about everything, and finally they became thirsty, and they asked their servant to bring them a sweet drink. Because that's what you want when you're staying up all night working on something, to give you a little energy and whatever. But by mistake, the servant forgot, he didn't put sugar in the drink, but he put white flour, maida, in the drink instead and gave it to them. And then the next morning, he realized, oops, I made a mistake. That was really stupid. I put white flour instead of sugar in the drink. And so he went and begged forgiveness from him. But the two brothers, Rupa and Sanatana, they didn't think anything about it because they'd become disgusted with themselves, thinking we've lost our intelligence because of our absorption in material affairs. And they could understand that this life is not just for our self-interest. It's not just for the purpose of doing accounts. There has to be something more in life. So they thought just for the love of money, doing these nonsense accounts, we stayed up all night long, and not even once did we chant Krishna's name. And it was at that time, that was the motivation that Rupa and Sanatana Goswami had to forget it. We're leaving this. We're giving up everything. And so they heard about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and they ran to Mahaprabhu. And they heard from the Lord. And after meeting the Lord, then they were returning home, and they overheard, Bhaktamala says, a washerman speaking to his wife. And the washerman was telling him, yeah, they may be royal ministers or they may be dogs, but there's no difference between the two, between the royal ministers and the dogs, because they do the same thing. The dogs, they pant and beg for some food from the master. And some of the royal ministers also begging from the king in the same way. And Rupa and Sanatana Goswami heard that. They said, okay, that's totally it. And they became very embarrassed and disgusted. And it was at that time that Rupa and Anupam, later Sanatana, Rupa and Anupam, they gave all their wealth and property away, and they set out for Vrindavan. And so today is the disappearance day of Rupa Goswami. And we meditate on him, we pray to him, as Krishna Kun was discussing yesterday in such a nice way, that he's Sri Chaitanya Mano-abhishta. He's the Mano-abhishta. He understands the inner mind and heart of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and therefore, Stapitam, he's able to establish that desire of Mahaprabhu. Now, one commentary we read on this verse, which appears in the writings of Narottam Thakur, one commentary is a very interesting question raised. Why Rupa Goswami? Why not Nityananda Prabhu? Why not Advaita Acharya? Why not Gadadhara Pandit? Why in particular does it say that Rupa Goswami is Sri Chaitanya Mano-abhishtam? Why are we Rupanugas? Why put so much stress on Rupa Goswami and not on these other associates of the Panchatattva, who are so much more significant, perhaps, when they say? And the commentator explains in a very nice way, because Rupa Goswami is even closer to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, because Rupa Goswami is closer to Srimati Radharani. And why is that? Because Rupa Goswami is Rupa Manjari. And Rupa Manjari understands the inner heart of Srimati Radharani. And so when Krishna wanted to taste the mood of Radharani, to assist him in tasting that mood and spreading the mood of Radharani, which is this Hare Krishna movement, Rupa Manjari came as Rupa Goswami. And because Rupa Manjari understands the Mano-abhishta, the inner heart, the mind of Srimati Radharani, then he's also Sri Chaitanya Mano-abhishtam, because Mahaprabhu is Radha Bhava Duty. He's in the mood of Radharani. So Rupa Goswami understands it, and therefore, Stapitam Nena Bhutale. He establishes that. So on this day, we offer prayers to Srila Rupa Goswami, who, as Srila Prabhupada said, this entire movement is under the guidance of Srila Rupa Goswami. He says it's conducted under the supervision of Srila Rupa Goswami. And it was at the samadhi of Srila Rupa Goswami, where Srila Prabhupada was staying in Vrindavan. And one Babaji, who was later interviewed by one of Prabhupada's disciples, commented to her that he was staying nearby, and in the middle of the night, often he heard some crying sound. And he couldn't figure out what it was. Finally, he came out one night and he saw Prabhupada out there sweeping around the samadhi of Rupa Goswami, crying, "Ha Rupa, ha Sanatan, please bless me, please give me your mercy, please give me your mercy, that I can fulfill the order of my Gurudev." So Srila Prabhupada says this Krishna conscious movement is conducted under the supervision of Srila Rupa Goswami. And Prabhupada told the devotees that his rooms there at the Radha Damodar temple where Rupa Goswami's samadhi is at, though Prabhupada, he said, I eternally reside there. That's my eternal home. So these are some of the glorifications of Rupa Goswami in this verse. We've gone over time. Hey, Hare Krishna. Nice to see Krishna Balaram Prabhu from South Africa. And Gaura Prabhu. Gaura Prabhu has asked a nice question. I'd like to, if devotees have any reflections, I'd like to know, what are you walking away with today from this discussion, something that's relevant to you, or perhaps you have a question. Gaura Prabhu, our dear friend in New Zealand, has commented, is it possible that a devotee might be a combination of the ruci and vicāra-pradhāna paths? Yes, it's not that it's only one. We should use both. Our acharyas have recommended we do both things. We should hear from a devotee who's rasika bhuvi bhavuk. The Bhagavatam describes, it's very important. We want to hear from rasik devotees. And at the same time, we have to practice manana. We should contemplate what we're hearing, what we're reading from. Okay, anybody else have any reflections? Do you want to say something, Satyajit? Prabhu, please come up here.
Thank you. You were mentioning about the two kind of doubts. And no, the first one is like, no, this cannot be possible. This cannot be possible. So following that, in the description that you just gave about the understanding of how is it possible that, like for us to understand that Srila Rupa Goswami got this specific you can say service or revelation of the Lord to be able to see Chaitanya Manovistan, knowing him more than the other ones.
Dipsis.
So then how can we, with that doubt, like first of all is manjari, right? And then the thought is a mundane thought. It's like, how is it possible that we have to go through the the worldly mundane life? Apparently, how can you reconcile this or explain this? That he has to go through, going to war with the Saint Shah, what is it?
The Nawab Saint Shah.
Yeah, the Muslim government and many other things. And then he's such a super elevated personality. Can you put it together?
What a beautiful, thoughtful question. Thank you. I don't know. I haven't read any explanation of that particular point, but we can say when Hare Krishna devotees don't know how to answer something, they have the same answer. It's a pastime, Prabhu. And we can say, definitely it's a pastime. With confidence, we can say that. But we can also, with confidence, looking at it and trying to understand it by what we've heard from our acharyas and śāstra, we can understand that through that experience, Rupa Goswami has given faith to common people that, he gave up such a position, Chakra Turnamasesh Mandalapati Shainim Sada Tuchavat, just like some insignificant thing. He gave up all that wealth and that big position. He just came to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's movement. There's some pastime with that. If he would just come and say, okay, here I am, I'm Rupa Manjari, and let's go, and there's no obstacles, then there's where's the drama? Where's the rest of them? And so even Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself, he's cursed by a Brahmin. who was angry because the Brahmin wasn't allowed to come and hear the kirtan of Mahaprabhu and Srila Sangha. And Mahaprabhu accepted that curse. And Mahaprabhu is separated from his first wife, and he cries in separation from her. What is the necessity of that? There's no necessity, but there is necessity. The necessity is that these are human-like pastimes. These are Nara līlā. When the Lord manifests his pastimes as the Lord of Vaikuntha, Narayan, Mahavishnu, there's no obstacles, there's no problems whatsoever. But it's a little boring in some ways. It's not as sweet. And as I think Krishna Kun was mentioning the other day from one of Vishwanath's commentaries in the 10th canto, he says there that the purpose of this material universe is not to reform the conditioned souls. But the purpose is to give a kind of black background. It was on a Pine Radha, I think I mentioned in the class. To provide a black background, just like a diamond. It's okay. Oh, it's okay. Just open it slowly. Just like a diamond, if you put a diamond on a silver plate, you can't see the diamond. But the same diamond put on a black cloth looks very beautiful. And so in the same way, where's the glory? If Srila Prabhupada just came to America and everybody who saw him just became a pure devotee and just immediately surrendered, what would we write Līlā Amrita? What would we write about? He had 2 heart attacks in 2 days coming over. He stayed in the Bowery. He had to step over sometimes dead bodies. There was a stench of urine. He stayed with a drug addict who tried to attack him. So many amazing things are there. They're not necessary, but they're done by Krishna to glorify that devotee. Does that help something?
Yeah.
Okay, maybe anybody else on the line? Okay, thank you. Onkar Prabhu says, sometimes when we ask some intellectual questions in the domain of bhakti, many seniors just give the same answers like, it's anarthas, Prabhu. No. But when I hear from you or Hari Parsha, Prabhu, my many doubts are cleared. Could you please say something on this? Because many devotees feel like this. I don't want to be offensive to seniors, but I just feel like this. Well, I don't have any qualification. Hari Parsha Prabhu is a very qualified person. I'm not. But we want to hear from persons who know Shastra. I'm not such a Shastra-vit pundit as Hari Parsha Prabhu knows so much more than myself. But my Guru Maharaj, he once told us, if you can't quote Shastra, don't tell them you're my disciple. And it was quite frightening. So I make a point to go out of my way and really try to quote Shastra, because by hearing Shastra, those samsara, those doubts will go away. If we just say, yeah, I think so, I believe it because I think so, that's lokik śraddhā. That's common faith. That's not Shastriya śraddhā. And Shastriya śraddhā is required. Lokik śraddhā is not going to deeply remove these types of doubts, which Srila JIva Goswami is speaking about. There's a sambhavana, samsaya, this doubt. It's not possible. Or viparita bhavana. It's just not true. These 2 types of samsaya, these are destroyed by Shastriya śraddhā, by hearing properly. When I go on quickly, we have a few more comments and questions. Lynn, you wrote me the most beautiful letter. I want to read this to the devotees here before we go this morning. Not online, but she wrote the most beautiful letter. I started dancing when I read your letter today. It was such a beautiful letter. She says, my reflection is that it's a relief to not feel that my devotion is somehow a lesser one because I do not need to have proof or even believe one way or the other regarding the truth about whether or not the number of guards is 1 million trillion or 84,000 or 6. What to speak of the number of toilets to accommodate them? Horrible. Yeah, we should just be simple, like a Bengali mother. Panchajanya is commented here. A bit of a long question. If one develops faith, relish for a particular form of Bhagavan, as well as the path of worship according to that association, okay, are we also to understand that one will develop attraction or desire toward a particular rasa according to that association? If that is the case, how is it that a disciple can desire a separate rasa from their guru, or apparently independently of any visible association with persons possessing a particular mood of worship according to the different rasas, but simply out of a feeling of being attracted to a certain rasa, which may be influenced by their material condition. For example, I know a person who feels they're attracted more to Krishna Balaram Sakyabhav than to Radha Krishna because they don't feel comfortable with the conjugal affairs. I understand that one can have impressions from a past life or inspiration directly from Bhagavan, but is this common? Also, how can one be sure that such attractions are not influence of conditions if such attractions are independent of the type of association one receives? On the other hand, if one can have a separate attraction from Guru or association in this life, as seen in the example given in JIva Dharma, then we may determine the source of such feelings to be from a past life or inspired by Bhagavan. Again, how common is this, and could such sentiments be mundane? What a beautiful question. Such a nice question, very thoughtful. I really appreciate it. To properly answer this would take us a few hours, but I can just touch on a little bit. Yes, of course it can be mundane, such sentiments, and they can be imaginative. And in answer to your question, how can we be sure that it's not mundane? Therefore, our acharyas have said that we should, if we have any kind of revelation or feeling like that, we should take that before our guru. And that guru may be our Siksha Guru, it may be our Diksha Guru. Which one is more prominent? Our Guru Maharaj was asked that question once. Which is more prominent, the Siksha or the Diksha Guru? And he gave such a beautiful answer. He said, whoever occupies your heart. So the one who occupies your heart, you take that question to. I had this revelation, Guru Maharaj, and I saw this thing, I had this feeling. What is this? In another answer to another reflection on your question, how does this come? We may not see a particular external source for it. An example is given of Dukhi Krishna Das, who was a disciple of Hridaya Chaitanya. And Hridaya Chaitanya was on the path of Sakya Ras. He considered himself, he's a disciple of Gauridas Pandit, and he was in Sakya Bhav, and he worshipped Krishna and Balaram like that. But his disciple, who later became known as Shyamananda Prabhu, who was initiated by him as Dukhi Shamdas, he developed, in association with JIva Goswami, he developed some attraction to mādhurya rati, or toward the conjugal affairs of Radha and Krishna. So in that case, it seems clear that it was due to the association of Srila JIva Goswami, but we wouldn't say that it's only by the association of JIva Goswami, because Guru has two aspects. Guru is both a person, we're persons and we want to develop personal relationships. Guru is a person, but Guru is also a principle. And you could Google that, and you could look it up in Srila Prabhupada's folio. Prabhupada speaks quite often about the principle of Guru. Just like, to give a mundane example, if you go and open a bank account, you do so with a particular teller, a particular clerk in the bank. And you have a personal relationship with them. You go in every week and say, hey Fred, how's it going? I brought you a piece of cake today. How's your wife doing? How's this and that? And you have a relationship, a personal relationship with that teller. But the teller is more than just a person. He's also a principle. And he's connecting you to that bank. And even if the teller goes away, he leaves his body, dies, or he gets fired from his job for some reason, you still have an account with the bank. So Guru is a principle. And even if that person, even if we lose faith in that person, at the time of initiation, we're developing a relationship with the parampara, and we're getting initiated into that. And so as a principle, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, in one article, he said that Gurudev can reciprocate with all the different rasas. Gurudev himself may be within Sakya Ras, as we're hearing about Hridaya Chaitanya. But as a principle, if you please Guru, then that means you're pleasing the parampara, you're pleasing Krishna. And then Krishna will reciprocate with whatever it is that we need. And that person may develop a particular type of rati, a particular type of attraction, even their guru may not have. But they'll consider that it comes from their guru. Just like Shyamananda Prabhu, he offered obeisances to his Gurudev, Hridoy Chaitanya. Said, no, this is coming by your mercy that this has happened. So it's a short answer to a big question. Thank you for such a thoughtful comment. And to Lynn and to Omkar and to Gora Prabhu and all the different devotees who are listening in. We will come back again on Sunday and continue our discussion on these verses. At least one more session. I think we may probably have at least 2 more sessions speaking about what is Suddha Bhakti. Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Vanchakalpatarubhishcha, Kripa Sindhu Devacha, Patitanam Pavanebhyo, Vaishnavi.